Hi, this is Mr. Cordes, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go over and review our two characters from the Most Dangerous Game. We are looking at General Zaroff. We are looking at Ransford. Both of them are very complex characters. Both of them have these dynamic qualities because they shift and change. And so we really want to kind of begin to break them apart and see what they are like and find textual evidence to support that. So as you can see in the Google Classroom, there's two attachments. One is the graphic organizer for Savage and Civil. General Zaroff and Ransford are both Savage and Civil at the same time. General Zaroff comes across very civil in the beginning. He begins to, welcome his guest. He begins to offer a place to sleep. He offers food, clothing. Like he's very hospitable in the very beginning towards Ransford. However, as we go through the story, we understand that he is extremely savage. He hunts people. His quality and his demeanor changes when he's hunting. And so he becomes very savage. Okay. The same goes for the same goes for Ransford as it does for General Zaroff. Ransford is very civil in the beginning, talking about hunting, even engaging in conversation with General Zaroff. Ransford says things like, "That's inhumane. That's what you speak of as murder." Those things, like he's opposed to the actions of General Zaroff, which shows that he's very civilized. However, as he's being hunted in the jungle, he then turns into a savage. And they're not purposeful, they're more of protective. He's trying to protect himself and survive. And so those are the savage things that come out. So for this activity, one, you do have your story. Okay, so please make sure that you've pulled up your story in some capacity because we're going to find textual evidence. But then two, this is the way that this is broken up, as you can see here on my screen, is one part is going to be for General Zaroff and one part is going to be for Ransford. So the very first box that we have here is for General Zaroff. In this first column, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. In this first column right here, I need you to find 3 examples from our story in which General Zaroff was civilized. Okay, and we want to put down the quotes from our story. So if we jump back over here, we are able to scroll down. We find a place we can even cut and paste and put it into that appropriate spot. So we have 3 pieces of textual evidence for how General Zaroff is civilized. And then we're going to do the same thing for how he is savage. So think to yourself, when is he savage? What does he do? Like maybe keeping the other sailors in the basement. That's one thing that he does is savage. He has the light fixture that he uses to crash ships along the rocks. That's another thing. Hunting Zaroff, which is another one. Hunting Zaroff. Hunting Ransford is another thing that Zaroff does. So let's take a moment. I need you to find 3 pieces of textual evidence for General Zaroff being civilized and 3 pieces of evidence of how General Zaroff is savage. So pause the video. Let's get those 6 pieces of textual evidence done. Now that you've accomplished these components, what we want to do is we want to understand what's going on and kind of what does this tell us about our character. So just like we've done in the past with This Shows That, we're doing the same thing here. And I would recommend maybe 2 to 3 sentences of what does this actually show us about General Zaroff. Give me a commentary sentence about this shows that General Zaroff is civilized. This also shows that General Zaroff is savage. What is this actually progressing and telling us about him and his character? Maybe that he's two-faced. Maybe that he hides his demeanor well. Maybe that he shifts back and forth between good and evil depending upon his mood and what he wants to do. Okay. Take a moment. Let's write down some analysis and commentary sentences. Start with the sentence starter. This shows that, and then we can remove it as we get closer to our papers. But this shows that What about General Zaroff being civilized? What does it tell us about General Zaroff being savage? Okay, take a moment, pause the video, 2 sentences of commentary that help us understand how General Zaroff is civilized and savage. Now that we are done with this first column this first box for General Zaroff, we're going to do the same thing for Ransford. Okay. Looking here, we're going to find 3 pieces of textual evidence where Ransford is civilized. So in the beginning, when he's talking to Whitney about hunting, when he is maybe investigating the sounds of the pistol and where to go and looking at the chateau and kind of being very observant in the very beginning when he arrives on the island. Where is he civilized? I like the part where he says, I'm not going to condone murder. This is not okay. That's a part that might be good as well. So if we go over to our story, we are going to scroll down. We're going to find those pieces of textual evidence, and we're going to put those into that box. Okay, so we're going to piece those together for how he's civilized, and we're going to do the same thing for how he is savage. Now, the way that he is savage comes more, again, like I mentioned, in a survival setting. This is much more of a protection. He has to protect himself. So where are the 3 moments when he gets savage? I would definitely put down the last part where he's in the bedroom and he's off to the side and he's like, I'm still a beast at bay. Like he's got that look in his eyes, that feeling of terror, and he's ready to pounce because he has been hunted for 3 days in the jungle. That would be an excellent one to put down here for how he is savage. And maybe along the other ones as far as what he does in the jungle to kind of protect himself and get ready for Zaroff's entry. Okay. So take a moment. Let's get 3 pieces of textual evidence for how Ransford is civilized. And then let's get 3 pieces of textual evidence for how he is savage. Okay. So you've had the opportunity now to fill those 2 in. The last item is our analysis. The same thing that we did up here. How is General Zaroff civilized? How is General Zaroff savage? Let's do the same thing here. This shows that Ransford is civilized in everyday life situations, right? This shows that this shows that Ransford is a savage in moments where he has to survive or protect himself, okay? Take a moment and just like you did before up here for General Zaroff, let's get 2 sentences of commentary. This is starting with this shows that about what it means about Ransford's character. What does it mean about who he is as a person? Okay. So now you have accomplished a lot within this graphic organizer. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pieces of textual evidence. We're not going to be using all of them for our writing, but we're going to be using a majority of them. The ones that you actually found can be used for this other graphic organizer. So if you look on the Google Classroom, it will also state that we are conducting an reason versus instinct graphic organizer. When you click on the graphic for reason to instinct, what this does is this looks at Ransford in a very detailed way. Okay. And we're going to pulling him apart even more. So we did the preliminary work here. We both know that they're savage and civil. We both know that. That's evident. Okay. Now the goal is to look at Ransford in a new way of looking how he uses reason. Reason is the idea of like processing your thoughts, thinking things out, making decisions, coming up with resolutions and evaluating things. Like this is like the intelligent part of your actions, the reason. Okay. Instinct is something that's like a gut reaction. It's a quick response. Animals use instinct when they're afraid or trying to protect themselves, just like Ransford did. And so we see Ransford go from reason to instinct over the course of the short story. So looking here, what we're going to do is this whole graphic organizer is purposefully for Ransford. Okay, we're going to pull him apart and understand what he's like. So the first thing I'd like us to do is let's focus on the beginning of our story. Okay, the beginning of our story, and we'll go chronologically. So in the beginning, what are Ransford's attitudes? What are his emotions? Okay, he's very calm. He is very confident. He is kind of sure of himself. He's inquisitive because he lands on the island. He has to figure out what's going on. We need to get a piece of textual evidence for that. Okay. Then what we're going to do is find what's an action or situation that kind of showcases those ideas. So let's say in the very beginning, he's confident. You guys can write this down, just pause and go back and forth. In the very first part, he's confident. He's kind of maybe arrogant. You want to use that word. He's curious. Okay. A textual example may be when he hears the pistol shots and he leans over the side of the boat. That could show his inquisitive or his confidence. Like, I know what that is. I know what that type of pistol is, right? Now, the action or situation, that could be it, right? Listens to the gunshot. Here's the island, uses his investigation skills, uses his hunting skills, right? And then let's find a piece of textual evidence for that as well. So we are filling this in with the different components so that we're able to kind of see the transition. So now then in the middle of the story, when he's talking to Ransford, when Ransford is talking to General Zaroff, we get more of him kind of wavering. He still uses reason. He's like, what you talk about is murder. You've invented a new animal. What are you talking about? That's not okay. He kind of begins to see those things. So what are his emotions and attitudes in the middle of the story when he's having conversations with General Zaroff? Okay, let's find a piece of textual evidence. Now, if your textual examples for this row right here, as well as for this one, come from this document over here, that's perfectly fine. Okay? Sometimes when he's civilized, that's also how he is showing reason. When he is savage, that's also how he is showing instinct. So it's okay if they overlap. They're not going to be the same, but they're going to overlap in some cases. It all depends on what you put here for the emotions and for the actions of Ransford. Okay. So what is he like in the middle of the story? Now we've got 3 places for the end of our story. I would suggest right here in this last box, ladies and gentlemen, put when he's still a beast at bay. That could even be your textual example right here. Okay. Right here in this box, this is when he's still a beast at bay. This one, he has swam through the ocean, climbed into the chateau. He is waiting for General Zaroff in the dark bedroom, right? Just waiting to pounce and kill him because he has been hunted, and he is now like a complete animal. He's just ready. He doesn't want to wait for anything. I would put that in here. This one is like hiding, swimming. Like he jumps off the cliff. He's not like pondering, oh, I could climb down the cliff and I could swim across here. No, he just jumps because he goes. Okay. So this part right here, and then find that piece of textual evidence that accompanies it. And then I'd maybe work backwards. So let's find maybe when he sets the pit, the tiger pit, maybe when he sets up the trap for Ivan. Maybe it's when he like climbs up into the tree and he makes that like swing latch that tries to hit General Zaroff in the shoulder. Like there's lots of things in which he is doing. So what are his emotions and attitudes as he becomes hunted? Okay. Find those pieces of textual evidence. And then what are his actions? What's his situation? And what's that textual evidence to support that as well? Okay. The very last component is explaining how has he transitioned? How has he gone from being a hunter to a huntee? How has he gone from this civilized man to this animal that's fearing for its life? Okay. If you've ever seen those books with the covers, I don't remember the title, but it's like a person that transitions into an animal. Okay. They like morph into something. It's a whole book series. They're usually for like fourth or fifth grade. But I remember seeing those covers and always thinking that would be a great book cover for The Most Dangerous Game, because Ransford essentially transitions into being an animal. How can you explain that in 3, 4, maybe 5 sentences? How does Ransford transition from using reason to instinct? What drives him? What pushes him? Why does he suddenly change? Okay. Take a moment to get that down. There's a lot for this graphic organizer. However, you are able to use some of the pieces of textual evidence from this one as well. So at this point, you've collected how our characters are savage and civil, how both of our characters are savage and civil. And then you've also collected how Ransford specifically goes from reason to instinct. Okay, so you've identified those, you've brainstormed, you have all of that information. Take a moment to email me or message me if you are lost or confused with an item, and I'll be happy to guide you. But this right here is going to be the setup for when we do our writing. Okay. Hope you guys love this story. I love this story. It's so fantastic. I'll talk to you guys soon.